I'm one of the things, having written I think 18 or 19 novels now, one of the things that I really enjoy being good at is knowing from the beginning when an idea is going to be good, because that is the thing you learn by writing many things. You know, in a way you just have to see. My first rule is take a complicated idea. Most of the reason why you stop writing and you run out of steam when you're doing a novel is that you get like 10,000 words in and suddenly you're sitting there and you're like, I don't have enough. You know, you just ran out of steam and you don't know why. It's because there's not enough going on. Like, you know, if you think about, say, Buffy, I'll just say this because most people here have probably watched it to some extent. And it's not, you know, you'd think, okay, it's just about a teenager who's like a cheerleader and she kills vampires. But it's not just that. Also, like, her best friend is a witch, and her other friend is a werewolf, and her other friend is like a vampire, but he's got a soul, so he's a special vampire. If he loses his soul, if he is happy, plus the mayor's like a monster, and the principal's of this. And it's like, there's all this stuff, you know, it's many, many, many kinds of complexity, and, you know, and many, many layers. So pick the most complicated idea, and then make it more complicated before you start. Think of all the things you can do. Don't just write about, you know, human beings, you know, rebelling against these aliens who've occupied the Earth. Make sure that there are human beings who are working with the aliens, and aliens working with the human beings, and there's other aliens that were enslaved by the aliens before who are here now as soldiers, but they don't really want to be. And, you know, just keep piling on the different connections and make everything as complicated as possible. So pick the most complicated idea. Blue hair, then green hair. Aqua, I'm a dude, man.
I'm just confirming that was me. So kind of a follow-up to what I asked earlier, but hopefully better phrased. Okay, so do you think that we will ever get to a point where we stop associating teenagerhood with that idea of panic? And if so, do you think we can use that wide YA readership by adults? If we can use that wide adult readership of YA to sort of accomplish that?
So right. So
how can I be a part of that?
Will the boom of YA make adults be less shitty to teenagers? I love reducing your questions. It's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting question. That is beyond my area of expertise, but I think that would be really cool. I mean, I know now that part of this conversation about the new stage of life and about 20-somethings being more like teenagers than they are like adults. Part of it has to do with making alliances across those, you know, borders and realizing that, you know, that the kind of things that we associate with adulthood are maybe not all great and maybe not for everyone. And hopefully that will, you know, bring us all to a place where we're less evil. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. That would be really cool. I've never even thought about that. It's a really good idea. Yes, green hair.
So my question was, like we've seen in this preview and obviously of this book, the trailer, you have a great community of admittedly really awesome writers that you're friends with. Would you argue that that's something that's important to be a successful writer? And by successful, I don't mean published, but writing good stories, that you need a community of other writers to be a part of to really be a good writer? Or is that more of just fulfilling the human need for companionship of people who understand what you're doing?
Man, the questions are good enough. So everyone heard that? Like, is it? Yeah. So I think it is partly just human companionship, and a lot of times when we write together, we'd be like meet at coffee shops or whatever, and literally there would be no information of use exchanged. It would be just like, you know, maybe over 6 hours, someone would be like, so you know that thing where you like pull a ladder down out of the ceiling and there's an attic? Is that a hatch or a door? And everyone would go like, hatch. And that would be like the only writerly interaction. The rest of it would be like, can you guard my laptop while I pee? But so part of it is just, you know, wanting to hang out with people who are like you. But absolutely it is the case that it makes you a better writer, and it is so great and so important to have that set of feedbacks. I mean, the overlap isn't exactly with this video, but 10 other novelists, 8 novelists, 1 screenwriter, and 1 editor gave me feedback on Afterworlds. So I had, because it's 2 novels, so I had 20 editorial letters, not from my editor, but from my friends. So there were 10 other people, you know, including Maureen Johnson and E. Lockhart and Holly Black, you know, they all like gave me editorial letters on my work, and that made it much better, and it made, you know, it gave me much more of a broader view of the way that people would react to this and where they would get confused and what they would get. You know, the hardest thing to see is your own navel in a way, and so I was getting like all these different eyeballs on that one problem. So you know, so that is really great. I mean, also, you know, I live with a writer. I live with Justine Lavalestier, who wrote Liar and edited Zombies vs. Unicorns. And one of the things that we do is that we read to each other. So like every 3 chapters or so, we will actually read aloud what we're writing, and that way you have another person in the house who knows, you know, who knows what you've been writing, and you can talk about things with. And also, while you're writing, while you're reading to them, you know, you get those responses, those human responses, like they laugh at the funny parts, or they don't, or they fidget, or they go, ugh. Or when I was reading Pretties, you know, when they're on the top of the dorm and the specials are coming and they're reading the letter, and she was like, "Take the freaking pill!" Or she'd sit there and she was like yelling and jumping off of her chair. And so I knew that scene worked. And so we, and so that kind of, and that stuff's important just in a very real way, like writing, there's also a very slow feedback loop. Like you start a book and it takes you a year to write it, and it takes a year to get published, and then the reviews come. Like imagine if you were a football player and you scored a touchdown and you had to stand there for like 18 months before the crowd cheered or even the scoreboard went over. Like nobody would play that game, right? So that kind of immediacy and having people in your life who can give you that feedback, you need that feedback, and it's not just you know, it's wow, look, all the adults are raising their hands now. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
You mentioned the Aussie slang earlier. Since you live in Australia part of the year, do you think that expanded worldview has